Hey, this is Dr. George Moricz. How to bulletproof your immune system by jump-starting a forgotten organ. That's right. There's a forgotten organ that once you jump-start it will boost your immune system. Well, first of all, my name is Dr. George Moricz, founder of your Youthful Blueprint and Regenerative Medicine Doctor. This is part 2 on the series Beyond Hormones and Beyond Weight, how to bulletproof your immune system. In a previous recording, you learned how to bulletproof your immune system while you sleep. In a future episode, we're going to show you how to jumpstart your immune system directly. But today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the forgotten organ, and that is your gut. That's right. People say to me, well, why would the gut be so important? It has far more cells, far more genes than any other part of the body, and it's often forgotten. It is most of your immune system. It has been estimated that it is 80% of your immune system. So why would we forget this? Well, first of all, with all this attention in the news about vaccines and passive immunity, all this talk, we often forget the very things that regulate our gut in the first place. Now, in previous radio shows, we talked about 2 basic parts of the immune system. Think of it, when you're born, you have what's called this innate immunity, okay? And then what happens later on is you have this second line of defense, adaptive immunity. The first type, the innate, the one that you're born with, is a quick response. It handles quick threats. And the second part is the adaptive, where we hear about things like antibodies and cytokines. It is sort of the one that has to develop. It's a little more complex. Why is this important for our discussion? Well, when you're looking at the immune system, you've got to look at the lining of the gut. So not only in your gut do you have bacteria and the food the food that the bacteria eat. So in other words, we eat food, and some of that, especially if it's insoluble fiber, it gets fermented by bacteria, these small chain fatty acids, and it protects the gut. Sometimes what we do is we have something called dysbiosis, where we have an imbalance. For example, if you had parasite and yeast that is imbalanced to the bacteria that you need in the gut, and then also if you have the wrong kind of bacteria. So you have to have the right population of organism, what we call the microbiota, and then also you have to have the right substrate, the things that it eats, the things that it's ferment. And when they're out of balance, then you can cause what we call leaky gut, intestinal permeability. For the simplicity of our conversation today, this is not about trying to sell you a probiotic, which is very questionable anyway. You would literally have to know what 1 billion cells look like inside your gut, and then try to decide how, in a domino effect fashion, introducing one live organism would do. And in most cases, it's a disaster. Now, if you have gone through my GI gut program, where we actually have mapped out what bacteria you're needing, now that's different, because then we are replacing something specific. But most everybody else is guessing. And even if you're trying to be good and eat foods that ferment, yogurts, different types of fermentable foods with what appears to be healthy probiotics, you really don't know what it's doing until it helps. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get enough fruits and vegetables, which have been shown to promote small chain fatty acids and even have effects on the way that you metabolize hormones. All I'm saying is that just getting a bottle of probiotics without knowing what's in your gut really doesn't help you. Now let's talk about the immune system. So how do we regulate the lining of the gut? Think of the gut as the size of a football field, okay? And imagine you have tiles, kind of like you have in the bathroom or kitchen, and there's grout. You know, when they put the tiles down, the way they get them to line up with each other, there's that grout. And if there was a break in it, there would have leaks. Well, the way that your gut works, it has to introduce certain substances, kind of like a gatekeeper. It has to let certain things in, and then it has to block certain things out. However, when certain molecules which are inflammatory are passed through the gaps or openings, that's when you cause inflammation. And this not only sets off your immune system, it can even throw off your brain function. So far what we know now is that you have a lining of a gut. It's supposed to protect you. There's a gatekeeper function of the immune cells. Let certain things in that it should and block others. When you have excessive leakage, gaps, and the gut bacteria are off, either because it has more parasites, yeast, or the wrong bacteria relative to the beneficial or good bacteria, then what happens is that you're unable to regulate this. So this sets off an inflammatory cascade. And this can even stimulate problems with your brain function, brain inflammation. It can set off your immune system, so it robs you of energy, you over-respond to things, even cause somewhat what we call an allergic response. Now, you do have things called immunoglobulins, you do have protective immunity, and that's really important. So diet does figure into this. Some people don't have good nutrition, they don't get enough zinc, they don't get enough vitamin A, they don't get enough glutamine, and that's for something of another topic. But just loading yourself with these things doesn't really correct it unless you kind of have a roadmap or a blueprint. And that's something that we can talk about later. But what I do in my programs when I do a GI gut blueprint, I map everything out. I actually show you what the bacteria are like, in other words, the good to bad to the iffy. I show you if anything's growing, if you have abnormal yeast or parasites. We even look at the diet of your bacteria, these what we call small chain fatty acids. They're fermentable fiber. What happens is that can be protective. It can be a food source. It can even help produce antioxidants and detoxify. So these are very critical roles. Years ago, if somebody said to me, hey, what about leaky gut? Well, I couldn't have told you, but we've come closer and closer to understanding how this affects everything. And earlier I mentioned it affects your brain, it affects your immune system. Well, what about obesity? Well, we also know that now too. So, the thought is, does the bacteria in the gut affect our brain and behavior? Well, we really know it does. And they've even done experiments. When you take rats, what they've done is they've done fecal transplantation, where they completely transplanted the bacteria through stool from an unhealthy or healthy to unhealthy and back forth. And then they've even done experiments where they gave antibiotics where you wiped out the good bacteria and even the bad bacteria. So, you can do probiotic studies, you can do antibiotic studies, you can do fecal transplantation studies. But over and over again, they're connecting the microbiota, the gut bacteria, with the brain axis. They've even looked at the way we trigger nerves. In other words, nerves can often control the way the brain functions, where the hunger functions. They've even looked at molecules. They've even looked at the type of bacteria that were influenced when you did these kind of studies, including brain chemicals. So what we can't do anymore is ignore the relationship between the gut and the immune system, and then further how it affects your brain chemicals, okay? So it can affect your mood, it can affect your sleep, and even pain. We're doing studies now where we're finding out that certain people even have more pain if they have an imbalance in their gut bacteria. So stress. People ask me about stress. Well, stress means different things to different people, but if you even take people under physical stress, bicyclists, triathlons, they can actually cause an imbalance in the type of bacteria that they have. In other words, they can have bacteria which we call LPS. It has the wrong kind of bacteria, and that can further aggravate the dysbiosis, the disruption in the two bacteria, and cause more leakiness. Okay, so far what we've discussed, and you now know, is how the immune system is very much important to your functioning. If it's overactive or underactive. If it's underactive, you can't fight infection. If it's overactive, then you might even have something called autoimmune, where you attack your body. If you ignore the gut, okay, and I'm not talking just about eating fruits and vegetables and taking probiotics, but if you ignore the gut, testing it like I do in my GI gut program, then you often miss helping people with obesity, you miss helping people with mood problems, people who take psychotropic drugs to regulate the inflammation in their brain. And thirdly, with all these underlying conditions that you see out there, including obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and with abnormal lipids or cholesterols, what we're missing is by not evaluating the gut, we are missing a way to regulate the immune system. And that's without vaccines. This is without isolating you, wearing masks, social distancing. We are boosting your gut, which is your immune system. It's 80% of your immune system. So oftentimes people ask me saying, well, Dr. Moricz, if this is such common knowledge, then why aren't we doing it? Well, quite honestly, like I do with all my blueprints, I always believe that at some point in your life, things were more perfect than they ever were. In other words, you had a most perfect pattern of natural youthful chemicals running through your body. And this affects all parts of your body and brain. And I'm astounded as to why we don't go back to the basics. So with a GI gut program for the person who could benefit from it, we actually do map these things out. And we do get to the bottom of things like leaky gut. We find out what's growing, what's not growing, and then we very specifically address ways to address that, and not necessarily through diet. Everybody thinks, oh, I have to go on a crazy diet. But find out what's going on so that you're not just doing trial, error, suffering, keep taking medicines, and feeling bad. I have yet to explain to most people, because I just don't get the time, it could improve the quality of their life. Now, do I think this is for everybody? Not really, but I think 10 to 20% of my clients who don't improve with my usual blueprint program for tuning their hormones, I think this would be of some benefit. And whether you test brain chemicals first or work on the gut, that's a decision that we make on a one-on-one basis. But my purpose today is to show you how to bulletproof your immune system by addressing the gut. But now you know why we even address it. You now know how important the gut is to the immune system. And if neglected, it can affect the way your brain functions, the way you sleep, how much excess fat you have on your body. It even hurts the results you have with exercise and diet. So in other words, you may not be optimally performing because of something that's going on in your gut. Anyway, I have to go. I appreciate the chance to show you how to bulletproof your gut by boosting the unknown organ, the little talked about organ, the gut. And for anyone else who's looking for my next series, please be sure to stay tuned on how to bulletproof your immune system as we address the immune system directly. Okay, so in the previous one, we talked about how to do it while you sleep, which is very critical. Today, we did how to address the gut, and next time, how we attack it head on. Thank you again.